And good morning, everybody. Happy Friday, or maybe not so happy Friday this week. It happens to be tax day here in the U.S., so kind of a mixed Friday, but it is still Friday. And if you're joining me live, my name is Brian Armentrout with the Food Safety Foundation, and every Friday at this time at 8 a.m. Mountain Time, 7 a.m. for Darren on the West Coast. Sorry about that. 10 a.m. Eastern, we have a live stream and talk about topics around food safety. And one of the things, if you're new to this, first off, welcome. If you're a returning person, welcome as well. And we really appreciate your support of food safety and that commitment that you need to continuously grow and improve. This is not a lecture. This is not a webinar. This is an interactive forum. And we live stream this on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And the comments here, you can actually interact with us and ask us questions as we go through our topics over the day. And my assistant, Renee, is in the chat. And good morning, Renee, to you. Hope everything is going well. And every week, I love to bring a new expert on to talk all things food safety. And this week, I'm very happy that Dr. Darren Detweiler was able to join us again. Darren, how you doing today?
Great. Yourself?
Not too bad. Not too bad. So you may recall Darren has been on the show before, and just an amazing response. He's a huge voice for food safety in the industry, and I'm just really happy to know him. He's an author, an associate teaching professor at Northeastern University. And he just came out with an amazing article that you're going to want to read. I printed out the first page here from my copy, right? And so this is an article on how food safety and social media intersect. And as we were doing our prep work for this show, Darren suggested that, oh man, social media is something I was like, oh my God, sold. That is a huge, huge topic for us in food safety. And this is evolving very, very quickly. And as you can tell, I'm very excited to begin this topic today. I want to jump right in it. But one of the things that we love to do is kind of give a shout out to everybody and say hello and let us know where you're at in the world. So Sharon, good afternoon to you. Very nice to have you on the show this morning. Let us know what's going on. And one of the things that we love to do to start it off as well is start off with kind of a joint activity together. And the thing that we like to do here early in the morning here in the US is have our beverage of choice. And join us where you're at to start off our chat today, please. Cheers. So my beverage of choice is coffee. What you drinking, Darren?
Water.
Water? That is an excellent choice for speaking. Coffee, the half and half in the coffee. Dairy, they always recommend that for speaking you shouldn't have dairy products, but I don't care. So let's dive into this right away. So social media, Darren, it's just, kind of as an overarching topic, right? It's amazing how this impacts us. One of the first things that comes to mind for me is these memes, right? And we remember back with the whole pink slime. And in my mind, that picture is just burned into my brain of this stainless steel pipe with this pink ooze stuff coming out of that. Yeah. And right, wrong, or indifferent, that image is linked to those companies.
Well, you look at, if we take one step back, though.
Okay.
There was no social media 30 years ago. And we talk about this kind of current era of food safety. And one of the things I included in the article is a photo that I took in 1993 of a T-shirt that was making fun of Jack in the Box. And I kind of thought of that, over the years as being a meme before there was memes.
Yeah. And
sometimes we don't think about, the fact that this evolution of the last 3 decades of a food safety culture pretty much is paralleled by the evolution of social media. Mm-hmm. Tony Hawk, the skateboarder, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. There's a documentary, I don't know, like a bio documentary kind of thing about him. And he's actually my age. And I think he's 7 days older than me. But there was some family video shot and some photos of him. And I was thinking about how younger audiences probably have no idea that, when he was a kid, you didn't have cell phones taking videos. You didn't have YouTube and Twitter and TikTok and all these social media platforms. So the fact that there was, video from his early age, early years of being a skateboarder is something you have to think about in terms of the evolution of technology and social
Mhm.
media. And we can think about we can think about social media in terms of food safety.
Mhm.
When 1993, 1994, we were thinking, I mean, literally the USDA put out postcards that they sent out through the National School Nurse Association to elementary schools. And we were talking about the labels that were put on packages of meat and poultry. Now they're pretty much just like printed in the packaging. But these were considered to be groundbreaking ways of communicating about food safety and public education kind of a thing. We weren't thinking in 1993, 1994 about the idea of social media.
Mhm.
And, and you see these, like you talk about the pink slime. There was the memes like about romaine lettuce and E. coli or Chipotle or there's been so many memes out there, and it's very easy to look at them and go, someone is like making fun at someone else's expense.
Yeah.
But when you step back and look at it and think that, okay, wait, basic message 101, a message requires a um, a sender
Mhm.
and a receiver, and it's only as effective as the ability of the receiver to understand that message. So there has to be this thought out there that the creator and sender of these memes has some confidence that there's audiences out there that know the ability to connect E. coli and romaine lettuce, or the pink slime and what's
Mm.
going on, or salmonella and the ice cream, or what's going on with Chipotle. So there has to be this social, public, non-professional awareness of being able to connect those dots that's out there, and it ends up becoming this pulse check, this way of, maybe it's unofficial. I don't know how you would make it official or scientific, but without doing some kind of big, official story. But it becomes this quick story that readers and audiences and viewers, whatever, can get it and go, okay, I get the story that's going on there.
Mm.
And I think it's really important. I've worked with other people, that focus on. I see Austin Welch has joined us
Yeah.
about storytelling, and I think it's incredibly important that you know it's like, if we can't tell a story, if we can't use social media to talk about this, then does the issue really exist? Well, we know that these issues exist with food safety. We know that some 3,000 Americans die every year, that some 128,000 are hospitalized, and some 48 million Americans get sick every year. So it would be logical that there's a story out there that's being told beyond industry.
Mhm. That's a really good point, Darren, because part of this too is you when you're creating a meme, and I use them in my business on LinkedIn, right? And I love creating
I've
funny
seen them.
videos. And there is a certain context. You're right. There's a certain context behind that. If, for example, you use the Willy Wonka meme, right? Everybody
Mhm.
knows it's going to be a sarcastic comment, right? It's kind of framing
Right.
that context. And there is a common knowledge associated with that. And to your point, if I'm creating something, because I'm talking with my fellow food safety professionals through these memes, that context and that base has to be understood. If someone who buys products from a food manufacturer and is not kind of in the know relative to the food safety world, that meme probably isn't going to make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, and I will recognize that there are circles of social element. I mean, a meme that could work here in the US might not work somewhere else in the world,
Oh, that's a good point too. Yeah.
right? Because of the context, right? Like, for instance, in the article you just held up, there's a Oprah meme, like
Yes.
that's the old "you get a car and you get a car and you get a car" kind of a thing.
The
And
convert-
if it's like me saying, "Oh, well, um, if I had a meme with the $6 million man kind of a thing."
uh-huh.
Okay, well, even within the United States, there's audiences who okay, what is the $6 million man? I didn't grow up in the 70s,
Yeah.
so that won't make sense. So there is an element of, it's almost like common denominator element of that concept, like again, like the Willy Wonka meme. There's the meme of the kind of the geeky guy who, you know um
Oh,
uh
the red-haired kid.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Or there's the like the 3-year-old who, I got this.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, yes. If I wanted to say, we solved this problem, or we achieved our biggest goal, yes,
Uh-huh.
meme kind of a thing. People would get that, kind of a thing. So there is this kind of methodology in terms of what is
Mhm.
tried and true in terms of, people get the concept of the context of the image, and
Uh-huh.
now put it into this story. And you're usually trying to use very few words, kind of a thing. But and again, that's just memes. There's
Yeah.
still this whole world of social media out there. um, when you start looking at food safety, I mean, you can find food safety on TikTok, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on people's. I found evidence of, like state health department, instant messaging and tweeting out information, and there's books, but there's also web pages for books, and there's even discussion groups on Facebook for groups, and there's,
Uh-huh.
I don't know, there's these live chats that you can find on LinkedIn even. I've heard about them, I've never seen them, but these LinkedIn live chats even. Um, um, and whether it is for people in the industry to be a part of a conversation and to expand, or for some people, it may be, their daily check on things, or a way to reach out to people that might not have caught it on the some other platform. And we've gone well beyond the, news at 5 and 11 type of a scenario, or the morning paper, where
Right.
the news cycles were so limited. It's like, if it wasn't on the 11 o'clock news, or if it wasn't able to get to the print and out for the morning edition of the newspaper, you'd have to wait 24 hours.
Mhm.
Now we can be talking about it every hour within the 24 hours, through multiple platforms.
Exactly. And then, I mean, the challenge that we all have now is trying to figure out what do we trust and what don't we trust, right? So we all tend to gravitate towards certain sources of
Mm.
information, and that gives us a narrative relative to that. But to your point there, I mean, it used to be Walter Cronkite would come on the news, he would tell you the news, and it's like, okay, that all right, there, I know what I need to know, right? And that was it. I mean,
Well,
there
we
was
have
no,
to. Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, we look at the idea of the liberal bias. You have the very right, the very left, and the very centered. It's like a bell curve of where
Mhm.
the different news outlets sit. And even so, even with the most trusted of news outlets, kind of a thing, there's even a difference between, and this is in my book on food safety.
Yeah.
Um, I took headlines from the Jack and Box E. coli outbreak,
Hmm.
uh, the New York Times, Los Angeles Times, and Washington Post, and during that period of time. But I also took newspaper headlines from within the Seattle area, the Seattle Times, Seattle Post Intelligencer, and a local newspaper, and there were two different stories being told.
Hmm. Yeah.
The research out there talks about how, um, only a small percentage of readers go beyond the actual headlines.
Right.
They look at the headlines and move on. If it doesn't capture them, if it doesn't relate to them or impact them, and based on what they read in the newspaper headline, they move on.
Yeah.
So, looking at just the words in the headlines, there was a difference in the stories being told. The national newspapers were talking about this problem about, the USDA, and this meat problem and contamination, and talked about the company and that kind of stuff. But the more local papers, they were talking about community and public health and families, and
Uh-huh.
talking about people and victims. And if you were really trying to get a sense of, is this something I need to be concerned about as a consumer, I think that you might have got that experience, that that concern from reading the local, state and local papers more so than if you were reading the national newspapers. And it's not to say anything bad about the national newspapers, but it just goes to show that there are different experiences, there are different messages being communicated to the public about food safety, depending on where you go. And of course, when we look at the idea of food workers, people working in restaurants and grocery stores and anywhere in the food industry, well, perhaps the consumer message is also the workforce message.
Mhm.
Whether it is how am I prepared to do this job, or how serious do I have to take what my boss is telling me at work, because I'm getting a different sense outside of these walls about is food safety really a thing. There has to be kind of a more balanced awareness and approach in terms of making sure that we look at this and it's not just a joke, or it's not just a that was then,
Mhm.
but if we look at how social media is keeping it's kind of like within the industry to some degree, it's the difference between a job and a career.
Mm.
The idea that these conversations are bigger than just what's what's the equipment I operate, or what are
Right.
the protocols in my office, or what's the flow chart of the the command chain of command stuff in my office. That there's this world talking about it out here. And Kimberly in the messages, because I'm
Yes.
looking at the comments here, Kimberly Dillian asks, how can we infuse science and food safety into the meme art form? Because she's talking about how memes could be used to inform and educate.
Mhm.
I think that's an incredible question,
Yeah.
Kimberly. Um, we are starting as an audience, as the general public, right? Over the last few years, science has been attacked,
Mhm.
facts have been attacked. Um, uh, there's a lot of questions about certain things, right? So I think that one of the things we have to think about is that we have to be transparent, connecting the science, providing a link to the science, referring to the science, showing some of the evidence here and there. I don't think that everything, like, we can't have every meme have, you know, um, a, a focus on, well, where did that come from? Well, the 1973 study, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
That defeats the point of a meme itself. But in terms of social media, I think one of the things, and I'm speaking about this as an academic, um, to have a link to where that study came from, to reference a citation or whatever, to have a reference back to some of this information, I think is still important.
Mhm.
I think that it becomes, to me in academia, I tell this to my students, if we're talking about transparency in the food industry, and you're looking at citations within a research that the students doing, that's transparency in itself,
Uh-huh.
right? We need to be able to go back. What is the source of this? Where is the research behind this?
Right.
So we do need to look at the science behind things. I think that social media platforms are great for the quick get your audience attention,
Yeah.
but what if we could hold them?
Mhm.
Uh, hold their attention with here's the source of that, here's how we can do this, here's how we can do this. We have to, I think, and Kimberly, I think I'm reading into this here. Um, Part of what infusing science into food safety memes and social media could do is perhaps transform the reader from being purely passive to perhaps being more active. Right now, what you told me this, what can I do with this? Well, as Mark Osborne points out in the chat, why not embed a QR code?
Right.
It's about as simple as you get. You see a meme and you can literally just kind of go, boop, or where's my camera? Boop, and now it goes back to that article, back to that journal article in food protection trends, or Journal for Food Protection, or
Mhm.
New England Journal of Medical, what is it? New England
What
Medical Journal.
Medicine?
Wherever it is, kind of a thing. And for the people who don't want to do anything other than look at the meme, okay. But for the people that do want to go beyond that, I love that idea, Mark, to click on the or to activate that meme on their phones and go to the source. That
Yeah.
could be a really great way of again transitioning or transforming the passive audience to a more active audience, and
Right.
that's really too the true in terms of our workforce. We don't want them to just do what they're told. We want them to um, or to not question things, right? We
Mhm.
want them to see things and say things. We want them to do things. We want them to be proactive. We want them to really embrace this idea of the Herculean effort that's needed in food safety,
Yeah.
and so they have to know the why behind it. They have to know much more than just I know what to do. Do they know why?
Yeah. Exactly. And I think too, right? It's like you can't speak to everyone, right? And that's one of the key messages in marketing at companies is that if you try and speak to everyone, you're speaking to no one, right? So you have to really understand that market of who you're speaking with. And these tools can be used for promoting positions, right? Whether you agree with them or not. And a lot of times these things will get emotionally charged and people will take sides on a particular issue, right? All I have to say is the word Frankenfood, right?
Yeah.
Now everybody who's on this call is just divided into two groups, right? Oh, GMOs, right? And they're ready to hack this thing out. Because part of it too, right, is when's the last time you had an argument on Facebook or something like this, and the other party walked away and said, you've given me a lot to consider. I think you've changed my mind, right? Never, never, right? They'll dig their heels in and fight. And I think that's just part of human nature, right? So part of this, and I think from a psychological standpoint, that meme kind of helps to provide that introductory piece, right? And so if you are an academic or a quality manager, a food safety scientist, or things like this, and you want to get to that information, now you've reached your correct audience, right? And say, I need to know about this particular topic, because part of this from our viewpoint, right, and why I do this every Friday is putting that message out there, because this right here is a social media tool, right? Exactly what we're doing right now. And it's a way to interact and build those relationships so that those bridges can be built. Because as Darren rightly points out, if you're working in food safety, you're working in a company perhaps, but you have a loyalty beyond that, right? We all have an allegiance to food safety. And it's why we do these things. And it's why we share this information. And memes can be a great way, as people are doing this on their phones, to say, oh, hey, here's something that is interesting to me. I want to learn more about that. And I think Darren made a great point of you need to provide them a method of getting more information if they wish to go down that path.
Well, something you brought up, Brian, is the idea of the audiences. When I was in 7th grade, I would imagine that my greatest question about food was, what is the toy that's inside the box of cereal?
Oh, yeah.
Or, ooh, is it Halloween? Can I get the cool Halloween, Boo Berry and Count Chocula and Frankenberry, cereals? They'll turn my milk blue or whatever color, right? But today, with social media and the bigger picture things, today's 7th graders are having conversations about the pink slime meme or about the Willy Wonka or the celebrating meme. They're talking about things. They're talking about the idea of and these aren't even necessarily food safety related conversations, but the idea of, oh, well, this company is against this or supports that or donates to this or has made this racist statement or is what is their political bent. People are really looking at younger ages.
Mhm.
It's almost like voting. Right. It's like they're voting with their dollars. I'm not going to go to that company. I'm not
Yeah.
going to go to that store. I'm not going to buy that brand because of this.
Mhm.
And so it really has, I guess, it has an opportunity to highlight that transition from the idea of the stakeholders being purely stock owners
Mhm.
to today's stakeholders within the bigger food issue, food safety, defense, security, fraud, all that authenticity concerns, are consumers more in general than ever before. So, I mean, I recognize that companies are having to deal with this transformation of the public, and it's not just, all they have to do is deal with the the marketing that we put on the packaging on the shelf in the store, or on the walls of our brick and mortar or whatever.
Uh-huh.
That there's a lot more messages that are getting out there, and I think that if the food industry is not aware of this and getting in front of this, it's a lost opportunity. But truly understanding the power of social media.
Oh,
Um, but I'm looking at a question on here. There's a whole other aspect. We've been talking about it in terms of like messages going out towards consumers, but there's so much research now in terms of information going the other way.
yeah.
When you look at Amazon reviews, Yelp reviews, and iwaspoisoned.com
Mhm.
as sources of this crowdsourcing data, ways that communication of information that is now not only being used by food safety experts to improve food safety, but even has been researched by Columbia University to literally find illnesses and even outbreaks that were never reported to the health department. And when you start looking at, for instance, iwaspoisoned.com, that's really, and again, I talk about this in my book. It sounds like I'm plugging, but I'm just, again, I'm being transparent.
Yeah.
In my book, I talked about how, I talked to the health department in around Simi Valley, California, which is about an hour north of Los Angeles, or a couple hours north of San Diego. Brian Ravitch, who's online with us. Anyway, the health department was telling me, well, we didn't just accidentally show up. There was enough reports of illnesses to I Was Poisoned that someone noticed a trend and connected that information to the local news. I think it was the local CBS News. CBS News contacted the health department, and this took place over a weekend. But by the time that the health department got out there, it was a little too late to find all the information they needed. But still, ultimately, the idea that an outbreak can be um, made aware of faster
Yes.
because of information that comes through social media, that's important.
Hmm.
I mean, ultimately, over time, we see a decrease in our options to resolve and mitigate an issue.
Hmm.
At the same time, we're seeing more and more liabilities, more and more people becoming impacted. So anytime we can use social media to shorten that timeline is going to ultimately benefit consumers in the long run.
Yeah, and I think too, right? Something that you need to think about as well, if you're a food company, dealing with all this information being thrown at you, is so there was a recent example of a food distribution retail warehouse in Arkansas that had an
Mhm.
infestation, and
Yeah.
an employee was concerned and took some videos, and he was fired as a result. But he posted that online, and boy, that sucker went viral fast.
Yeah.
And FDA went in there and investigated and issued a 483 report, which I downloaded and read. It was 22 pages long, right? So
I read
elevated.
it. Yeah,
Yeah,
I read that.
it's like,
And what's
whoa.
amazing is when you realize how many times the state level inspectors went in there,
Mhm.
noted the same exact things, and someone from the company signed off on it.
Yeah.
I think it was 11 times within within a 3-month period. Well, there was a whole year of inspections, but what I saw was a number of inspection reports over and over again, and it was only a few people at the company that had signed off on this,
Uh-huh.
but it was still like how many live or deceased rodents, or how many other huge gaps in food safety were involved there. And of course, if they had stopped that, realize too that when the FDA was able to pressure them into doing a voluntary recall,
Uh-huh.
right? Um, what was recalled? Everything regulated by the USDA, or I'm sorry, but everything regulated by the FDA: food for humans, food for animals, nutritional supplements, biomedical devices, vitamins, anything, literally everything, food and drug, right?
Uh-huh.
That was sold or distributed between January of 2021 and February of 2022. That's a long period of time and a long list of categories of items there, and we're talking how over 400 stores across 6 states were shut down. That means think about how many employees, right, were now impacted. Think about the fact also that, in this, you held up the article that just came out in Quality Assurance Magazine. Also in the same edition of the magazine, I talk about the idea that food safety cannot come at a premium. The idea that there are families that they depend on the dollar store. They depend on low cost food as their source of nutrition and substance.
Hmm.
And we can't ever have a scenario where, oh, well, if they wanted food safety, they should have gone to a more expensive store, kind of a
Right.
thing. That's not what we are as a
Unacceptable. Yeah.
nation. We're not saying that food safety is for people who can afford it. We're
Right.
not saying that food safety expectations are for employees that work at more reputable stores or companies or whatever. It should be across the board.
Oh, absolutely.
But I do think that social media about this, I mean, think about how many people are whether they're at home with products that they're like, did I buy it from this store?
Yeah.
I don't know. And if we're looking at, well, did that family read the FDA announcement? Probably not.
Yeah.
How many people in America read FDA announcements, or get their news from Fortune magazine or something like that, or
Exactly.
uh, you know,
Well,
Restaurant Executive Weekly, kind of a thing.
well, Jill here is thinking along the same lines as I am too with my next point here is right. Social media and food safety are an annoying combination. I've told so many people online to call the number on the back of the package and they scoff at me. Sometimes they just want to go viral, right? Well, and sometimes too, right? Also within this, Darren, we're assuming that a lot of these activities are performed for good. Sometimes they're not. We hear about these stories and we kind of laugh about it on Yelp, right? The family restaurant who has a fight and part of the family breaks off and creates another restaurant, and then they start putting negative reviews on each other's reviews to try and damage that other company, right? We hear about social media espionage and things like that, so you have to be on guard for that too. There could be information that's out there that's not true, and so you need to be aware of that and be able to counter that.
Well, I mean, it's not just social media. Look at the last 2 or so years with the pandemic. All of a sudden, you've got people that are ordering food from apps and they're having third party doing the shopping or third party doing the shopping and the delivery. Or I saw just a thing on social media just earlier this week talking about how there are people that order like your Grubhub, DoorDash, other similar platforms,
Right.
food for lunch from a restaurant, but they're not leaving tips, and so people aren't picking up these foods for delivery because they're not going to get a tip. And so there are there are restaurants that have like a wire, I mean a metal shelf kind of a thing, and someone buys it, someone orders the food, they package it, it's been paid for, they clip the order, they're just waiting for someone from these third party deliveries to come pick it up and take them. And they're like, look, they're all piling up because no one's taking them because no one's leaving a tip.
Right.
Is this a food safety thing? Well, over time, yes. The idea of, is the food cold? How long has it been cold, kind of a thing. But now we're starting to talk about the idea of food waste.
Mhm.
This completely wasted food because of an app. So there are great benefits from technology, how we can have new, whether it's new products or new platforms or new means of grocery shopping or getting foods. There's also, when you look at the SWOT analysis, there's some strengths and some weaknesses. There's some opportunities, but there's also new threats. Just as much as we can be talking about social media in terms of how people can be informed of good things. Well, there's also misinformation.
Yeah.
There's also information that clouds and only makes the problem worse, kind of a thing. When what Jill here was talking about too, the idea of people calling the number on the back of the package. there's also this assumption that, well, we're not going to print all this information like we were required to before about, nutritional information, about ingredients, about allergen hazards, about all these different things, about certifications. We'll just slap a QR code on the box and someone can do that. I don't think we're there yet in terms of a society where everyone can just whip out a phone that has the right technology, that has the QR code reader that can actually do that. I guarantee that there are many sections of society that just does not have the wherewithal to be able to, quickly look at a barcode and get the answer they need. And even those third party, I've been in situations where those third party folks that are doing the shopping at a grocery store for someone based on an order placed over an app, they're looking at some of these packages and it's like, okay, is this cage free, is it free roaming, is it organic, is it local, is it grass fed, is it, there's too much information on there, I don't know what to do. So
Yeah.
we're relying on the knowledge of this information, what are these different things, and to do that. I also think in terms of misinformation, Kimberly brought up a good point here. Sabotage.
Yeah.
Is it possible? Yes, it's not only possible, but there's evidence out there that there's sabotage that takes place because of how we're using new technologies. And I think that while we can easily say that, oh, well, these biggest of companies, they can accommodate for that. But in our communities, we love these smaller stores. We love these smaller restaurants, these mom and pop. Sometimes the best fill in the blank you can get.
Yeah.
You see these food boards on LinkedIn or whatever, or Facebook. I mean, where can I get the best Philly sandwich, or where can I Philly steak cheesesteak sandwich, or where can I get the best chicken, or where can I get the best Thai food or whatever? And it's usually never a big chain. It's
Mhm.
usually XYZ mom and pop place,
Right.
and those are the ones that are most vulnerable to some of these misinformation or sabotage over social media, the attacks, that kind of stuff, and how a bad review can make or break them.
Oh, absolutely. And I think part of this too, right? And this is something you go over in your article too, which I think is really good, is kind of segmenting those markets, right? Of those people that you're talking to, right? So there's people who are passive, and they're aware of you, but they have no opinion either way, right? And then you have active individuals who like your product and are aware. Oh, okay, yeah, no, I like this particular product. And then the holy grail for marketing groups within companies, right, is the loyalist. Those people who are out there actually saying, to your point, oh my God, I went to this restaurant and it was amazing. You have to go there and try X.
Right.
Right.
Well, I think there's also groups within the industry, though. The last part of the collection of articles I wrote, I did a comparison between two different food science, food safety individuals. One is about 25, and one is in her late 40s. This is the debates that I had in the article, and the older person. I won't say older. I'll say the more experienced person, especially because I think that this person
Person
might have joined us on
the
the
veteran,
chat here,
the
and
experience.
please chime in if you are here. She talked about how she's using social media to network, how she's using it to reach out, to communicate, to do all these different things, and how it was a bit of a curve, an experience of growing with this and figuring out what works and what doesn't work, and
Mhm.
what tools are going to be help in terms of efficiency and effectiveness. The younger user, I really enjoy one of the things that she said as well. She was talking about how so much of social media does get a little too much of do this in the more professional sense, not the consumer sense, in the more professional sense. It's very specific, very directed, and what she wants to see is more of the she talks about the Bill Nye story, the idea of the real personality behind it, and the this is my journey, and this is how I came upon this, and here's telling the story, not just here's all the facts I found. Okay, but how did you find those facts? Why did
Right.
you look for those facts?
Yeah.
That those are what some of the newer food safety and quality assurance, experts are looking for in terms of those stories. And I think that if he's still here, Austin Welch will talk about the idea also in terms of the power of story.
Yeah.
When we look at even what we're doing right now, right? There are some things, and there's a meme about this. This meeting could have been saved by just sending an email, right? Well, that works in some cases, but having these conversations and telling the story behind these things, and having these bigger illustrated discussions where we can connect the dots, this is what's really kind of missing. And
Yeah.
even during the pandemic, when all of a sudden in 2020, oh, okay, well, this conference is canceled, this conference is canceled, this conference is canceled, what I found is that while people understood, okay, we're not gathering in the city, we're not flying, we're not staying in hotels, we're not cramming 1,000, 2,000, whatever people into a conference facility here, that didn't take away people's desire to stay connected, to have conversations, to continue with the networking, to share stories, to listen to other people's journeys, and to gain inspiration, and also to gain validation for what they're doing, to continue to have these chats about food safety, transitioning these on to like LinkedIn Live or Facebook or other platforms. It almost seems like these are activities that even after such date that the pandemic is officially over, if you will, and we can go back to normal.
Hmm.
What I love about these conversations, like what you and I are doing right now, is how much more accessible and inclusive they are, because it's not just who can afford to take some time off and travel to a strange city and stay in a hotel and attend to this. It is now on demand, or within the reach of anyone at any level within the food in safety or food industry and beyond. And it is this more inclusive conversation that social media as a whole,
Yeah.
right, has really allowed consumers to share. It's not just the experience of what they see on the shelf going down the aisle, or what they see on the big menu at the restaurant. It
Yeah.
is all these options out there in terms of having their finger on the pulse of what's going on, having access to information that can be critical to them, having that validation of what they do and the importance of what they do. There's so many things that it offers.
That's an amazingly good point. Thank you for bringing that up, because one of the things that when I had quality teams, I would always sit down with them, and at some point or another, I'd say something along this line. The hardest part of what we do is not necessarily what we do; it's the fact that if we do it well, no one notices, right? Because if you're doing food safety well, you're not having recalls, you're not having product on hold, your customers are happy, right? Everything is going great. And it just kind of, there's an assumption in companies that just automatically happens, but there's a ton, everybody on this call knows, right? There's a ton of work behind the scenes to make those things happen. And forums like this, and being able to talk and share stories and elevate this information of all those things that are happening, is hugely positive, right? So if you are now a consumer, and you're buying a product from a company, and you have a better understanding of all the things behind the scenes that those companies are doing to help protect them and their families, that's a win-win.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you brought that up, because I mentioned earlier this idea of the Herculean effort behind food safety, and this comes. I came about this idea from. Well, most of us are aware of The Jungle, 1906, but later, right after it was published, there was a London Daily Times literary review article, and it talked about the book. But before it really talked about the book, it 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 talked about how real it was, and it said that the things described by Mr. Sinclair happened yesterday, or happening today, will happen tomorrow and the next day, until some Hercules comes to cleanse the filthy stable.
Mhm.
Well, we know that there's no such thing as any one Hercules or a Hercules at all, but we can talk about it in terms of maybe it's this poetic way of talking about a Herculean effort behind food safety.
Yeah.
An enormous amount of work, strength, and courage. And all the technologies that are out there that can help us with our work and our strength are great. But it is this transparency, it is this validation, it's this conversation and awareness that people actually, do notice this, and are talking about this. I think it plays a role in that courage to do what is right, to go, cost benefit analysis and ROI tells us this, but we really need to do this because this is the right thing to do. Or I know that the numbers only show this, but let's imagine this increases, and let's go ahead and be proactive and try to prevent this and mitigate it, and not wait until we have, so many people whose lives are never going to be the same anymore before we finally take action. That's real courage.
Yeah.
And anything that we can do, social media, included, to help the courage of everyone at every level within food safety. That is where we're going to truly find the full circle come around, in terms of, it's not just knowing about it, but having that impact on it as viewers and participants of social media when it comes to food safety.
Yeah, we have to tell our story. And to your point, it's look this up online. Look up the hero's journey, right? The hero's journey is the basis for any good story. And if you look at good movies, they all follow that same pattern. You have a young person who needs to grow and yearns for something else. And a mentor shows up and says, I will show you the path. And then they begin training and working, and there's huge, huge obstacles, and there's setbacks and challenges and struggles leading to the ultimate challenge. And the hero,
but you know what happens along the way as well?
What?
They're usually, sometimes they are, but some of the best stories, the most loved stories, they're not alone. They meet and make friends along the way who also now work collectively to make a difference. Some may be tall and skinny, some may be hairy, some may be metallic, along the way. And you may think that I'm talking about Star Wars. Other people might be thinking I'm talking about Wizard of Oz. But either way, we're not alone in these journeys. And how can we be connected and grow in our strength through social media is something that I think we have to consider.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, and you're exactly right. Star Wars, perfect example of a good story. And at the end, the hero has grown and learned and become a better person, right? We need to use that, right? In Austin, as you had mentioned, it does an amazing job with this at his business, is showing that path and that struggle, right? We're all people and we're all learning, right? And being able to say, here's the journey we've gone through 50, and here's the challenges, and here's the things that we've done, and look where we're at now. We're not done, but man, and that just helps people understand and grow, right? And one of the things I always would teach my managers as well is it's not enough to show an auditor or FDA or whoever comes to your facility your document and say, there you go, read this. You have to explain why. You have to tell your story of what that document does, and importantly, Darren, what it doesn't do, right? Because you can't do everything, right? You have to be choiceful. And the more you can explain that and elaborate that, super valuable, right? You have to have the technical skills, but you also have the communication skills, really. And that's kind of the 30,000 foot level we're talking about here. Social media and memes and articles and live streams, right, are methods of communication and getting that information out to that target audience and to new people who may be interested, to your point, to join us on that journey, right? And now the metallic guy is with us, right?
Yeah. Well, there's I was talking about this with my wife, and she was watching this show called The Witcher.
Yes.
Right. And so here you got this hero, but on his journey, he's accompanied by this guy who makes up all these songs, and he's got his little guitar, whatever it is. It's like a guitar. And he makes up these tales, because they'll go to these bars and he'll sing these songs that are telling the tale, kind of a thing. And I think it is Tale to Tell the Witcher is what he's singing. In a sense, the show is about social media.
Yeah.
Of that world, of that time, right? Because it's about the social media, the story that's being told, and that's following the exploits of this guy. It's just that, it looks different, it sounds different, but essentially that's social media, because that's how people are aware of what's going on, because of what's being told but through the song in these bars, kind of a thing. And it's literally like he's the Ponch to his John. He's the Mr. T to to all the other members in the 18, whatever it is, right? They are on this journey together. It literally is saying that this hero's journey is part of the hero's journey, if you will, is whatever is that form of social media in that world. And we have to realize that that's what this is. That's what we're talking about here. It's not that there's the hero's journey and then there's social media. They go hand in hand.
Oh, 100%, 100%. And part of this too, right? Part of that message, I think, within there too, right, is because in that example, that's a great one, right? Because in that show, The Witcher, he's kind of dour and grumpy and I don't want to, and then he goes and kicks the bad guy's butt or whatever else. And the bard who's joining him along the journey is also a little bit of comic relief, right? And I think part of what was pointed out in your article too, from the younger generation who was getting this information, is this needs to be presented in a way that I like, right? If I perceive that this is being overly political or too far, you run the risk of turning me off, right? So you have
she literally uses those exact words, and I think Gwendolyn Jones just typed on the chat here the idea of the stories of courage. The food safety professionals are congratulated and recognized. I think too often I've seen some of these award shows where it's like, and the person getting this award is Mary Smith. Here you go, Mary Smith. And I'm sitting there in the audience. I'm like, I want to know more about Mary Smith.
Yeah.
I don't want to know more about the sponsor of the award. That's great. I can read about that, but I want to hear, what inspires Mary Smith. I want to, what was a challenge that she overcame. I want to, read more about, or hear more, listen to more about this journey, this hero's journey, if you will. It's one thing to recognize the hero. It's another thing and I think, again, it's kind of like I was talking about that show. It's one thing for that hero to come in, everyone applauds him. Well, that's half the show. Mm-hmm. Hearing the how did the hero, conquer the monster or whatever, is the other half of the show. Right. So we need to make sure that we're not just telling the facts and we're not just creating a picture of doom and gloom. We're really celebrating through understanding what were the motivations, who was the mentor, how did they find that courage to bring forth this Herculean effort that we're now applauding them for?
Yeah, exactly. What were the battles along the way? And I think a lot of what our conversation today is outwardly focused, outside of the company conversations. This applies in companies too, right? You have to be able to communicate these messages within company. And so, for example, right, we've all been in plants and sat through GMP trainings, right? And it's a word salad of 20 PowerPoint slides that the instructor stands up front and reads through. Every year within the U.S., there are 50,000 issues of foodborne incidences and 3,000, right? No. It's like, this is a picture of someone's child. This child was made ill by a product, right? And telling that story, this is why we do these things. This isn't some abstract thing. This is real life, right? And being able to connect, right? So that works with the guys on the floor, but don't forget, if you're, middle management, even senior management within a company within food safety, you need to help educate the rest of the organization as well. And using those tools is critical.
Well, we can talk about the 30 years or so that we've had of this current food safety culture. There'll be another 30 years.
Yeah.
There's going to be people that come and go. We've already lost some of the biggest names that have made such incredible impact in food safety. And, we do tell some of their stories, but there's going to be, there are people right now who are, 10, 11, 12 years old, who they want to find that inspiration for what they think they want to do and how they end up becoming involved in food safety. And so it may be another 15, 20 years before they are that hero that we listen to and we celebrate. But imagine the idea that in 20 years, that person doesn't even understand, what was the journey of so many heroes from the 90s and the 2000s and beyond in terms of food safety. And we've had the most radical changes and challenges and influences on food safety. So these stories have to be told. And I agree with Jill's talking about how training is a snooze fest. How can we turn into something more than a snooze fest? Well, get a guy who can play the mandolin and become the bard for your company and tell the tale, kind of a thing. Or Kimberly was talking about, and I love this too, because I used to be a STEM teacher years ago. that it really should be thought of as STEAM, include art in there.
Yeah.
Maybe along the idea of using your company's resources in terms of packaging and social media for outward stuff. How could we use it to tell the stories of our own heroes within our company walls?
Hmm.
How can we use that to capture the real world courage and again, that hero's journey within our own walls, and use that to really not only make training more interesting, but to, again, we're validating, we're prioritizing, we're saying we're gonna really talk about this out in the open. We're gonna share this on social media. We're gonna do these different things and create not only a world for this topic in which people understand and can be part of it, but also where I mean, you're setting. Think of the message you're setting as a company, right? You're not hiding this,
Hmm.
right? You're not only talking about food safety when there's a failure, and you're trying to blame someone, or you're trying to avoid scrutiny of the media. You're out there proactively saying, "Hey guys, food safety is important to us. Listen to some of these stories." Having that influence on industry, having that influence on the next generation of workers, having that influence on consumers, I think is powerful. It's much more powerful than any badge or label or certification that you could put on a package.
Perfect summary. Great way to bring it back to the 30,000 foot level. So I think part of this, right, one of the key takeaways for me, Darren, on this is right, is these are powerful tools that you can use to promote your message for food safety, right? The message that we're all trying to create. Don't discount these, right? These things are extremely powerful, right? We need to be able to promote and identify these things and work at doing that, not only within our organizations, but as a loyalist to the discipline of food safety, right? We're part of that group. We're out there promoting food safety and building that. And so we were talking a little bit too, Darren, before we came on here live, and it sounds like you have a pretty exciting project coming up here.
Yeah, so I can't talk too much about it, because it's still in the works, and the company doesn't even have their final name they're working on, or their name for the project. So it's got a placeholder kind of a thing. But there's actually a documentary about food safety being filmed, and I am both in front of the camera and behind the camera as a technical consultant. And what's nice about this is that it's not just about one incident, or just one perspective. When we start to look at this as one of those kind of multiple perspectives, multiple stories, telling the tale, allowing the audience to connect the dots and really see food safety in a new light. I mean, we're talking about a scenario where um, most people become aware of food safety after they've already been harmed, or
Mhm.
someone close to them has been harmed. When in reality, based on the numbers, if 3,000 Americans die from food safety on average, for failures in food safety on average every year, that's a lot. That's 8 people a day if it was to play out.
Oh,
If we were talking about, oh, here's this train company that kills 8 people a day, or an airline that 8 passengers die every day, we'd be up in arms about this.
yeah.
We'd be like, how is this? How does this company stay, or how does this industry stay in business, kind of a thing. The concerns right now over, for instance, should the FDA be split up, looking at the idea of the responsibilities and the priorities within the government, I think are one level of conversation. But it still comes down to the idea that whether you work for the industry or the government, or you're just a consumer, um, um, and I say just a consumer, um, everyone's a consumer.
Yeah.
It's not exactly as if some population is less susceptible, or more susceptible, or vulnerable, or whatever, or exempt when it comes to food safety. I do note that what I talked about earlier in terms of the idea that food safety should not be at a premium.
Yeah.
But food safety is something that affects us all, and I think that the more that we embrace social media that we can all access and we can all
Mhm.
grow from, whether it's grow professionally or grow individually. I think that it's a critical conversation, and it just is not one that I've seen talked about in such a way. So
Yeah.
this documentary makes complete sense. This idea of there's a lot of documentaries out there. Let's look at one in terms of food safety, because everyone can relate to it. It's not just the Tony Hawk fan
Yeah.
or the people who like the toys from the 70s. Everyone can relate to this topic.
Absolutely. So once again, to close out our conversation today, and I hate to do this, right, because we could easily talk about this for another hour, but everybody's got to get back to what they do day to day. So again, if you're watching this live, and even if you're watching this on a recording, it doesn't matter either. Thank you, right? Thank you for your commitment to food safety. Thank you for allowing us to share this information with you. Take what you've acquired today, what hopefully we've been able to communicate, and use it, right? So if you just collect data, it's not helpful, right? How can I execute against this? What can I do to help improve a little bit, right? A little bit more every day. That's all anybody needs. So Renee had put earlier in the conversation the link to Darren's article in Quality Assurance Magazine. Renee, if you could put that up again here at the close again as well. Read his article. It's really, really good. So Darren, again, I always love having you on. Thank you very much. I appreciate it greatly.
Thank
And
you.
for everybody else, thank you. And of course, we will see you back here next Friday, the 22nd at 8 a.m. Mountain, 10 a.m. Eastern. And if you're on the West Coast, 7 a.m. And we will see you here for the next food safety chat. So everybody have a great weekend. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, Darren.
Thank you.